Hello there. Today on Take Two, I am talking to my old friend Charles Ciup, who is down in California. And Charles, I want to start off by saying that you have more Emmys than all of my friends combined. So where does that come from, my dear?
You're saying I have more Emmys than you have friends?
Than my friends have combined.
So
Emmy,
where does
my
what,
Emmy award-winning friend you are.
so where does what come from?
All those Emmys
Oh, my
behind
natural.
you on the
My,
mantle. Yeah,
those.
those guys.
Oh, that comes from my natural talent
Ah, of
that I
course,
developed at CKVU in Vancouver.
of course.
Four,
So tell me about them.
four of them are from Dancing with the Stars. I have like a bunch of nominations, but of those nominations, four of them turned into actual Emmy awards, and one of them is from Hairspray Live that we did.
Right, that was an amazing piece.
The script was literally this thick. I'm not kidding. Literally this thick, over 700 pages of script. That I spent 3 or 4 10-hour days just working on the script, whittling it down. Because there's lots of parts, the way I do my job as a technical director on music shows, there's a lot of dialogue that I don't need to know. I need to know music. I need to know where the camera cuts are for bars and beats. I do need to know where the camera cuts are for dialogue. But when it comes to the music, I don't need to know the lyrics. I don't need to having the actual music in front of me is sometimes a help, but mostly for the kind of work that we do in live television, it's bars and beats. So I just need to know after 3 bars and 2 beats, I need to cut to a different camera. After the next 2 beats and maybe another 3 beats, I need to cut to another camera. So I can reduce all that script down just by marking bars and beats and taking all the other extraneous stuff out. And it's a complicated but methodical process doing that. That I won't get into because it's eye-rollingly dull.
Tell me about how producing Dancing with the Stars and other shows like that, how has that changed under COVID regulations? Because it's got to be way more challenging, I would think.
Well, just the process of going into work has become more challenging. And in the early days of the COVID pandemic, when there were only a few hundred cases and they shut down production, once they tried to figure out how to open it up safely. So it required that we get tested earlier in the week, uh, you know, the, you know, tested earlier in the week, wait for the results to come back. Once the results come back, you're good to work for a few days. And then then you can go into work. Without that test, you're not allowed to work. Or if the test comes back positive, obviously not. You go into work, then during the days when you're working, you get tested again to cover you for the next few days of work. Or on your last day of work of that week, if you're coming back sooner than 5 or 6 days, that last day of work, they'll test you, and that test will cover you for the first day or two of the next week. So it's this whole complicated scheduling process
Mm.
just for COVID testing. And now they've opened now that we have thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of cases of COVID, way more, and instead of shutting down, they opened it up again.
Yep, of course.
People have to work and pay, and take care of their families and stuff like that. So I get that. Now that I'm old, and I don't care about my family, um, I shouldn't really have to do that. But, I do. So now the new regulations, which just came out last week, or 2 weeks ago, now we have to get tested within 48 hours of the first day. So I have to, and I live out here in the Palm Springs area, right? So it's a 2.5 hour drive into LA for me. So I have to drive into LA the day before work, get tested, get the results that night, because they turn them around in 5 or 6 hours now, and get the results that night. I'm cleared to work the next day. I go into work, I get tested up the yin yang. Well, not the
Sort
yin
of,
yang.
sort of, yeah.
And not the Chinese method that they're talking about. But Maybe I shouldn't have said that.
Okay. It's okay. We'll go with it. We'll go with it.
Um, anyway, so then you get tested there. This is before you do any work at all.
Right. Right.
Then
So,
you go
so
into work.
okay, yeah. So you come into work. So how difficult is it now? Because I know I put this to you and said, how do you have that audience in there? They're not social distancing. What's going on? Only to discover they're not real.
Sorry, you keep cutting out. Say that again.
When I asked you about, how can you be back in production with that huge audience, none of them social distancing, and then very quickly realized, oh, yeah, they're not real.
Yeah, they're not real. It's all virtual audiences now. So America's Got Talent did a neat thing during the summer where they created a virtual Zoom wall of remote viewers. A couple of hundred remote viewers. So that was great because you had the judges you had the stage, and behind the judges you had this Zoom wall of viewers. So when performers were doing their thing on the stage, the audience was actually seeing them live and applauding and laughing. At least because I didn't do AGT this year, I only get my information secondhand from the people who did. So I'm thinking the Zoom wall was live, but it may not have been. It may have been a virtual wall. As a viewer, for the viewer experience, you hear the applause, you hear the laughter, you see the people in the Zoom wall doing their thing. It all makes perfect sense, and it feels right. On a show like Dancing with the Stars, we couldn't do that on our stage. We had no audience. All of the audience section was now covered by light panels, to jazz up the dance room, the dance hall, the ballroom.
Mm-hmm.
The applause and the laughter and the booing and we're doing this live, is all sweetening. It's not real, right? It comes off of a machine with a very skilled operator who runs all the cues and everything like that.
Who decides who he likes and who he doesn't like?
Heavily directed, but it gives you the atmosphere of a live audience. So because if you shot that show without that sort of thing while you're sitting there at home, it would just sort of feel flat. You see dancers doing something amazing and there's no response. It's like a comedian standing on stage telling a great joke in complete silence. And even though you might laugh, you hear nothing else in the room. It just sucks the atmosphere out of everything. So a lot of the shows had been doing that. A show like, and these are live shows, a show like Masked Singer, which is, we shoot it as live, we shoot live to tape. And again, there is no audience there. So the performers are on stage, they're singing, but we have a virtual audience. It's all computer graphic generated when shot from behind. So when you see a camera dollying across with heads in the foreground, those heads are all virtual. They're all computer animated. And it's called AR, or augmented reality. And so that tracks along with the camera. So it's a very clever technology.
Right. So what about the impact, though? What about the impression that it gives that there is a live? I mean, people may not know this, but they're watching it and they're saying, well, how come they can all be there?
Well, that's something that's been discussed many times. And, it depends on your point of view. When we have shots of live audience in there, but they're live audience from previous seasons. So you get the reaction of the crowd, and it looks like there's a live audience. I've heard comments that when people are watching the show, they either don't pay attention to it, they just watch it like a regular TV show. Then I've heard comments of people who watch the show and go, I'm a little uncomfortable seeing all of those people packed into that room and not one of them is wearing a mask and they're all sitting side by side. But then there's a little disclaimer at the end of the show saying the images of the audience that you've seen have been taken from previous season. There was no actual live audience involved in this.
So how do you feel about it?
When I was shooting the show, I felt fine. It was just doing a show. When I watched the show at home, there were times when I felt uncomfortable seeing that many people. Because don't forget, I watched that show aired a month or 2 or 3 after we shot it. So now the pandemic has progressed. Things are much worse out there than when we originally shot it. And when I see that, it makes me uncomfortable to see that many people in a room without masks, even though I know that those people weren't there during the pandemic. It's like watching an old episode of
Anything.
Let's Make a Deal. You know,
Yeah.
they're all sitting there and you don't give it a second thought. Or you go, oh, those were the days when we could actually sit beside another human being. But on this show, because it's recent, it's within this time period, it's a little disconcerting. And then you just sort of fall into it. If you know that the audience is not real and you're only having this sort of gut reaction every once in a while, eventually you sort of fall into it and sort of live in that universe. You accept that the audience is not the real audience, but it's there to sort of enhance the production and sort of get everybody in the mood. A lot like laugh tracks were on sitcoms, where they were, creating an atmosphere.
Right, exactly.
So that's what this does. I don't know how I would rather see it done. I don't know if I'd rather see it without an audience. I have a feeling that maybe that's going to feel a little flat when you have just the performer and the judges and nothing and nobody else reacting. Or, we've never tried it, so we do it during dress rehearsals, obviously. When we were shooting the show before pre-pandemic, we would shoot the show without an audience, but we weren't really focusing on that. We were focusing more on the performances. Once everything is cut together, it has a whole different feel, and we shoot a show like Masked Singer. We shoot long. All of the judges' discussions are much longer than what you see on air, so that they can get the best bits that drives whatever story they're trying to tell forward. So all of that is cut down. So it doesn't have at all the same feel when we're taping it as it does when you see it on air.
Sure. So listen, before I let you go, my dear, what is it like living in California right now?
Well, it's cold today. It's probably 60 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay.
There's snow on the mountains. I went to get a COVID test the other day, and we had snow. We had lots of snow on the ground. It was pretty wild. This is what
In Palm Desert.
it was just outside. It was Beaumont, which is on the way to Palm Springs, just outside. I'm not sure if you can see this, but let's have a look.
Oh yeah.
Okay, that's what the drive home was like at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. On the 10 freeway.
So it's almost like you're still living here.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, listen, thank you so much, Charles, for doing this. It's lovely to chat with you anytime. We miss you up here.
Yeah, I miss being there.
One of these days we will be together.
What's that?
One of these days we will be together again.
Well, we got this place. It's got lots of room on the patio and in the house, ready for visitors.